we compete with each other.
Thank you very much. And I think this is a very nice roundup of a panel that was on time, so it was just the questions that went above time. And I thank you very much, and you deserve a big round of applause. Thank you.
Thank you to our speakers, and there will be a second agency leads dialogue following this one. The coffee break will be right after. So for the second one, we will have representatives from 3 countries as well, from Switzerland, a gentleman happens to be chair of ESA Council as well, from Portugal, and from Slovenia. Renato Krpoun, Ricardo Conde, and Sabina Kolesa, please join us on the stage. Ludwig, back to you.
Thank you. Welcome. So I could say now small but beautiful, right? So I do the timer again in all fairness to the previous panel. But I know you will be doing great equally. Let me start with you, Renato. And we were talking a lot about what happens also in the nations. Now, you're the chair of the ESA Council, but also in Switzerland, there is a lot of motion in the system. And just a few days ago, the Weltraumkonzept, Gesamtkonzept Weltraum, so the general concept of space and time, maybe. Maybe you can elaborate on what is happening there and how does that fit into a European picture? Thank you.
Thank you very much, and also from my side, thank you very much for the invitation and being here today. Well, I mean, first of all, it's not about everything in space. I mean, we have space policy, which was published in 2023, and the space policy basically said it's an umbrella for sectoral strategies. And the overall conception space is a sectoral strategy for defense. So it has been defined by the Defense Department in Switzerland. It will be associated to a budget, which is important. We heard strategy without a budget. We need some budget, and this budget is probably going to be around a bit more than 800 million Swiss francs, which is roughly 850, 860 million euros over the next 10 years. Unfortunately, we're not at the 35 billion of Germany yet. Who knows? Maybe we'll get there
not yet.
Stage. But important is it defines certain domains where the Swiss Army wants to be active, electronic reconnaissance, ELINT, SSA, and so on. I'll spare you the details. The report will be out in English in a couple of weeks. You can read it. But I think because the second part of your question is more relevant, is how does it fit into the overall context, the European context? And here we have been working very closely with the Swiss Armed Forces because the first idea of them was today, let's do everything ourselves. We have certain capabilities in Switzerland, we'll buy the systems, we'll try to get industry to work that. And we said, no, let's think about a more European scheme. And essentially think how can we leverage the investment we do in Switzerland with other investments which are done across Europe. And this is how we got in the European Space Agency in the upcoming ministerial, where we have the European Resilience from Space program, and there will be clusters. There is a cluster which is called ALPSTAR, where we're trying to gather all this know-how in Europe from certain member states who want to have sovereign capabilities and to invest together. So this reduces the overall risk for individual member states. It creates a joint market, and we can work in transparency and also foster interoperability.
And ALPSTAR refers to the Alps. So I think in terms of nations, you want to make a comment who is going to be in this?
Well, we're still discussing with various nations, but it's certainly not only Alpine nations, to be very clear.
It's not only Alpine.
It's a nice name.
It's a nice name, but it's
gives an ambition to look at your mountains, look up at the heavens.
It's a piece that you put basically in a federation between those that tip in, but also in its own, it can be part of a bigger network.
That's exactly the point, is interoperable, but also interoperable with the rest of the ERS system.
Excellent, very clear. So, Sabina, You are a new member on the stage, and maybe also more in the near future. And so also in ESA, by the way, and we had the pleasure to be there as SB also earlier this year when you joined ESA. Maybe you give your perspective as the new lady on the block.
Well, thank you. Well, this year it's really an important year for Slovenia. As already mentioned, we became the 23rd ESA member state, and we are also intending to join ESPI later on. It is an impressive journey. Well, since the last 10 years when we joined ESA as associated member, the space sector has been developing rapidly. And that's why I would like to point out the importance of cooperation. No nation can do anything on their own. So for us, the cooperation with the European Space Agency and also with other nations is extremely important. And within the country, we have developed also a system of cooperation among all the ministries. So we have formed interministerial government body. So all the ministries now know that space is not only the Ministry of Economy, but it relates to all of them. And we also have strong cooperation with industry and institutions as well.
Excellent. So welcome to the club, if I can call it this, and very soon welcome to ESPI. We will have a moment later after lunch today in that regard. Now, Ricardo, who is one also of our new members of 2 years back next door. And ever since, I think also space in Portugal has really taken new prominence. And I know you're active in Santa Maria. So is this something you can explain? What are the ambitions when it comes to spaceports?
Well, thank you very much, Ludwig, and also to our colleague, the new colleague. It seems that you are recruiting new members for ESPI.
This is a risk when you get on a panel here.
Indeed, I really echo what Walter just said, that we need the competition in Europe. And particularly if we were looking, if Europe is a space power, I think we need to assure that access to space is one of the dimensions to be a space power. And particularly in this domain, I really believe that these 20 initiatives that we have running to develop small launchers, micro launchers, medium launchers, I think they should have home to their operations. And of course, we are taking advantage of our geography with our Atlantic islands that we have, in particular in the Azores. And I remember very well that we started this, let's say, initiative in 2015. I was involved since the beginning, when Airbus looked particularly to that place to install somehow the spaceport for their development at that time, some small rockets. And of course, we are continuing with this opportunity. And of course, since 2015, we overcome some obstacles, particularly legal obstacles. And we did our space law. Also, we are quite flexible. We use the legal framework as an instrument, competitive instrument. I can tell you that, for example, we issued a license for any infrastructures to launch suborbital launches next year, less than 3 months. So this is a world record, I assume. And particularly to license some satellites. We take 45 days to launch new satellites. And we are, in our pipeline the next year, several satellites in our constellations, particularly the Atlantic constellation and other initiatives, that we want to see launched from there. Of course, these 20 initiatives of small rockets, they need a home to operate. And I think this is also a dimension of investments in Europe. I was yesterday in Brussels in the conference, and I hear from Kubilius, the commissioner, that we need to look particularly in these directions, not only at alternatives. Alternatives are complementary to the big launches, small launches, and infrastructure. So this is what we are particularly doing in Azores.
Yeah, excellent. I would argue there maybe was the time of innocence when people thought with multiple national initiatives looking into spaceports that this was a bit of a prestige thing, if I may say. In the meantime, I think it has become clear that this is part of the resilience, because it gives you not only maybe multiple versions of rockets, but also multiple places from which you can operate, which is key to having a resilient system that does not rely on a single rocket or two, or one or two places to launch from.
Yeah, indeed, and this is somehow also what our first colleagues here in the panel just said about the fast response.
Exactly.
So if you are doing your own satellites and you want to book your flight, you take two years. So I think Europe needs to position themselves in a different perspective. So these small initiatives is also to give an answer to the fast response. And if you are working now in the, let's say, in the security domain to give this fast response, I believe that we should have this dimension of the small initiatives. And also, this is a story about the taxi and the bus.
Yes, it's
right?
an Uber service.
Yeah, in the Uber, yeah,
Yes.
indeed.
And I'm convinced that we will have these Ubers.
Yeah, look,
in many ways.
we have the initiative, several initiatives for infrastructures in the UK, 3, 4, and also Norway, Sweden, and also we have now this perspective for Santa Maria of the Source.
Yes. So somebody will do the Model T production of the satellites, and somebody will have the Ubers to make them drive or fly. I come back to you, Renato, to maybe elaborate on the point that you are not in the EU as Switzerland. You share this with the UK, with Norway. You're all also members of ESA. You're also all members of ESPI, but you are not in the EU. Now, this sometimes can make things a bit challenging. We heard some remarks earlier from George again. How do you see this convergence happening?
Well, thank you very much for this question. Let's think of, I mean, we always see, or there's always a talk about the non-EU ESA member states as a challenge. And I think we have to, first of all, change and think it as an opportunity. Because we're at a very specific moment in time. We have several countries outside of Europe looking at Europe for leadership and asking, you are leading Earth observation, you're leading PNT, you're preparing for IRIS², starting to work on quantum communication, show us the way. And I think when you look at UK, Norway, Switzerland, there is a lot of innovation ongoing in these countries. There is a lot of things that can be brought into the picture. And if we think about today, the internet doesn't belong to anybody. If we think, and if we look who is doing the interface standards today, Bluetooth, VESA, you name it, PCI, they're all done somewhere in the US. Who is leading them? Intel, AMD, Google, Apple. I think on Bluetooth, I've seen one European company, which is Ericsson. So we're completely out of the picture. So I think we have to change the attitude and think, instead of going for a closed autonomy, we should think, how can we make an open autonomy? How can we integrate these industrial standards? How can our industries want to do that? Because right now, we're seeing verticalization. And the next step after verticalization is, of course, standardization. And I think this is the way we should be discussing. And it's also a way we're promoting when we talk to the European Commission to see this opportunity and not to seize it at the moment we are in it.
Excellent. And I would again come to you, Sabina. And I think when we talked prior to coming together here, you mentioned also the ESA Strategy 2040. I think also the initiative that was subject to yesterday's conference on the resilience initiative, and maybe you can explain your role in this.
Okay, thank you for the question. I have to say that Slovenia has its own space strategy 2030, and the goals within this strategy are closely in line with the ESA Strategy 2040. Especially when we talk about the climate actions, when we talk about the goals in relations to the autonomy and resilience, and inspiring new generation of people. So we are a small country with huge ambitions. We are engaging also heavily in the Earth observation initiatives within ESA. We also try to invest more in the near future at the CM25. And we are also discussing to join the ERS program. Why? Because we also had some natural disasters like floods in the past several times. And we want to improve the risk management system. We want to minimize also the costs and the risks for the civil society, and also enhance the management system for not natural disasters only, but disasters as such.
Excellent. And maybe for the international audience, ERS is the European Resilience from Space, and that was subject to a conference yesterday, and it's subject to the proposal of ESA in a month from now at the ministerial. Now, to round this up again, I come back to you, Ricardo, and we talked about the international cooperation component. We already talked about Spaceports. There's also Atlantic Constellation, but also I think you have a special interest in African countries, for instance, or Portuguese-speaking countries. Can you elaborate?
Well, indeed, I think Europe must extend the borders for the space diplomacy, right? I think we take the advantage because we know very well some countries, particularly, I can tell you that Angola, Mozambique, Morocco, Egypt, and also, but not only Africa. I think it is important to look also to Ibero-American countries and South America. We are running initiative also with my colleague João Carlos from Space Agency, the Spanish Space Agency, which is the network of space agencies, Ibero-American network of space agencies. And we are trying to leverage this diplomacy, space diplomacy, in several initiatives. I think this is somehow our contribution to Europe to extend their borders overseas, in particular with, I'm seeing Etienne seated here. For sure, we need a close cooperation with Africa. There are several initiatives in several countries in Africa that we need to be close to them and them close to us, also in South America. What I have been observing, particularly in South America and Africa, there are talents, and this is something, youth, that we need to take advantage also to doing things in a collaborative way. And I think this is a good opportunity also to Europe, particularly you, Ludwig and ESPI, to take also this action. I think you should not be only confined to the borders of Europe, but also to give this perspective of a space diplomacy, particularly with Africa and South America.
And indeed, it is one of the lines of activities that we will reinforce. Yesterday, when I introduced our new status as a quasi-international organization, I made that point very clear, and we have been talking already. I think this is also a very good example here of the diversity of Europe, where it is a complex construct, but it has its own resilience because we have states that are connected to different parts of the planet, and I think between us, but also beyond us, it is really something that is unique. There is no other place that has this resilience built in.
And they have the ambition. I've been observing, I know particularly some countries, we have been quite involved in work with them. There are some ambitions, and contrary to what we think, they already have the skills. I can tell particularly a case that I really know closely, which is Angola. They are really pushing for a space program in Angola. And they have some geosatellites. There are unique conditions also to spread with the territory the space ambitions. It is quite interesting, and I really believe also with the leadership with the African Union should be a player to unify these countries and also to leverage the collaboration with Europe.
Excellent. Thank you very much. I think for the sake of time, I would prefer we give everybody the chance for a moment of rest and a coffee, including yourselves. I would thank you very much, a round of applause, and I hand back to Tomasz, who will give us the clock for the coffee break, but please, a round of applause for these excellent panelists.
Thank you.